I can imagine that. I saw the tornado on one of the videos of it. It was just huge. And it damaged every home, every building within this really small community. And so some news there this morning, and we are on the lookout. We have a slight risk of severe weather, but it is possible today. Renae Azziz is going to join us, founder and director of Virtuoso Education, which is a consulting firm that supports educators. There's new research showing the achievement gap in education may have more to do with the type of school than actually the type of student. Is that right? And we're going to talk about that. You can dial in and talk with us here, 919-860-9783, as we go along here this morning. And Renae, thank you for coming on the show. Good to have you.
It's my pleasure. Good morning.
Tell me about this. Okay, so you're saying, if I understand right, or at least this research is saying, that the type of school may actually matter more than the type of student. Now, are we talking about like charter schools or something like that, or what are we talking about exactly?
Yeah, actually, it's homeschools, Doug. So there's a new survey that Dr. Brian Ray of the National Home Education Research Institute, they're based out in Oregon. A new research study that they've just completed indicated that specifically African American students who are homeschooled outperform the nationwide mean in reading, language, and math for all public school students. So really that means that African American students who were homeschooled did better, not only than African American students in public schools, but better than all students in public schools. So that's really the nature of what this study is saying, which tells us a lot about this, ongoing problem in our public schools around the achievement gap.
Don't we see this, homeschool kids? I mean, I look at the spelling bee, for example. It seems always it's a homeschool kid that wins it. Is it, they get more attention, obviously, at home. Some people don't like this idea of homeschooling and all that. But, I mean, it does seem like they do better, and that includes African-American kids, apparently, huh?
Absolutely. And so it's a good observation that you've made. What I think this study tells us is that, all students really can learn. And the example you gave of the spelling bee, there's something about being able to provide the right kind of education for students that helps them flourish. Now, not all of us can run out and homeschool our students, right? But what we can do is take from this research evidence of what we can do as educators in the public school system. And I think that's all about making sure that the education that we provide for students is rigorous, it's relevant, and then really make sure that we're developing relationships with students. Those are the three things that will help our public schools kind of match what we find in studies like this one.
Renae, what do you think about that? I mean, okay, so is it just there's too much going on in the public schools, the disruptions that are going on, in the classrooms, for example? I mean, after all, public schools, they have to take, every child out there, whether they're troubled or not. Is that part of what's going on here, or is it, is it the curriculum? What do you think is why public schools or just the schools at large can't really match up to the homeschooling?
Well, that's really the magic question. And actually, this problem has been studied for more than half a century. There are lots of factors that we can identify as the reasons why we see these achievement gaps, all the way from things to school funding, to the effects of poverty, because as you say, we're in public schools accepting all children of all, readiness levels. But really two factors that we address most often at Virtuoso Education have to do with the cultural proficiency of educators and disparities in exclusionary discipline, as you say. So I really think that until public schools do a better job of ongoing training for teachers around how culture impacts learning and behavior, and also how we can minimize discipline issues in the school, we're going to struggle with these achievement gaps until we do those two things.
When you say culture, let's talk about that just a minute. What exactly with the culture changes? Is it the demographics going on in the culture, the type of student that they're getting? What do you mean exactly when you're saying that we need to train them there?
Right. So culture is a little word that describes a big idea. And really what I mean by that is culture is really how we think, things we value, that we learn, right? And so that guides how we teach, how we behave, how we make decisions, how we interpret behavior. So what I'm saying is that the research in the area of looking at cultural disconnect between teachers and students indicates that there are different reasons why, for example, students are even disciplined. And there's a real connection between the discipline gap and the achievement gap. If students are being suspended out of school or sent to the office, of course, they're not getting academic instruction in the classroom, which then widens this achievement gap. So we really need to look at how our interpretations of behavior could be influenced by our own cultural values.
Renae, I want to make a comment too. I have a teaching background as well as my radio career, and for me, what I've noticed in the teaching world is that we're so worried about all the kind of political correctness stuff. We're worried about Christmas. We're worried about this and that. And the other thing is we're also worried about looking good. And what I mean by looking good is assessments. And I think personally, there's nothing wrong with assessments and accountability, but the way that we do assessments and the way that we're trying to hold, or the legislators are trying to hold us accountable in North Carolina, for example, I want to ask them, like Dr. Phil, how well is it working for you? How is it working for you?
Yeah, that's a great point. And interestingly enough, I agree with you. And that's interesting for me to say. I'm trained as a school psychologist. And the primary role of a school psychologist in schools is to assess. But there's value in assessment, but there's consequences for doing too much of that. And like I said, I agree. What we should be taking from studies like the one we started talking about from Dr. Ray on homeschooling, there was nothing in that report that talked about the need to assess more. There were 3 things that they identified that were really important for making sure that students were achieving. First was the instructional programming. We need to make sure, again, that instruction is not only rigorous, but relevant to the student. Kids ask all the time, why do I have to learn this? How will I use this? We have to be able to answer those questions as educators. The second thing they identified was the learning environment. As public school teachers, we have to create an environment that's positive, that's safe, that's orderly, but one in which kids want to come to. We have to focus on what we want to see, as opposed to focusing on, the stop, quit, don't do that. And then the third thing is really about how do we engage parents. Parents in the study were not educators, yet they were still able to make huge gains with their students. And so we need to, as educators, find a way to collaborate more effectively with parents, I think.
All right. Renae Azziz, by the way, you can go to their website and learn some more information about this, Renae. And also, I'm going to circulate the story there about African-American students doing better with homeschooling. What's your website again? I don't have it right in front of me here. I should have, but I don't have it.
Yeah, it's www.virtuosoed, short for education.com.
Well, very interesting. Renae Azziz, thank you again for being on the show this morning.
My pleasure.
It's good stuff. Founder, director, Virtuoso Education Consulting, a firm that supports educators. We'll be right back. Traffic and weather together, 7:12 this morning. Some early sun, maybe some severe weather after 4 o'clock today. We'll have a high today of 82 degrees. Let's go to Rick. Traffic update every 10 minutes.